My name is Callum, and for the past 7 years I thought I knew Maren better than anyone. She's always been the kind of woman who turns heads, her auburn hair catching the light, those sharp green eyes that could cut through any lie. But lately, it felt like she was looking right through me. It started with little things. Maren began working late, claiming a new project at the firm was eating up her evenings. She'd come home smelling faintly of someone else's cologne, her hair perfectly styled even after a 12-hour day. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. But then she started guarding her phone like it was a state secret, never leaving it unattended, always face down on the table. She laughed at jokes I wasn't privy to, and her texts became a constant, silent companion. One night, I caught her smiling at her phone in the kitchen. She didn't notice me watching from the hallway. Her smile was different, softer, almost shy. I hadn't seen that smile directed at me in months. I asked her who she was texting, and she brushed it off, saying it was just work gossip. But the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her voice trembled ever so slightly, it was enough to plant a seed of doubt that wouldn't stop growing. I tried to push the suspicion aside, but it gnawed at me. I started paying closer attention. She'd leave for work earlier, come home later, and the distance between us grew in ways I couldn't measure. Our conversations became transactional grocery lists, bills, schedules. The warmth that once filled our home was replaced by a cold, polite silence. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. Maren was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked. I know that now, but curiosity and desperation got the better of me. The screen lit up with a message from someone named Beckett, a name I'd never heard. Her mention. Can't wait for tonight. Counting down the hours. My heart hammered in my chest. I scrolled up, reading messages that left no room for doubt. Flirty jokes, late-night confessions, plans for secret dinners. It was all there, in black and white. I felt sick. My hands shook as I put the phone back, careful not to leave any trace. When Maren came out of the shower, I watched her through. New eyes. She looked radiant, humming to herself as she dried her hair. I wondered how long she'd been living this double life, how many times she'd lied to my face with those beautiful green eyes. That day, I realized my marriage was no longer what I thought it was. The woman I loved was a stranger, and I was left with nothing but questions and a gnawing sense of betrayal. I knew I couldn't confront her yet, not without a plan. I needed to know everything. I needed proof. And most of all, I needed to understand how the person I trusted most could become the architect of my heartbreak. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spun in circles, replaying every message, every suspicious moment, every time Maren had smiled at her phone instead of me. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee, feeling the weight of betrayal settle over me like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. I knew I couldn't just confront her with what I'd seen. If I wanted answers, real answers, I'd have to be smarter than that. I needed proof that no one could deny, not even Maren. That's when I called Rowan. He'd been my closest friend since college, the kind of guy who could read my moods before I even said a word. I told him everything, my voice barely above a whisper. He listened without interrupting, then let out a long breath. You can't let her turn this around on you, Cal. If you're going to do this, you need to be absolutely certain. No doubts, no room for denial. He was right. I couldn't risk Maren gaslighting me, making me question my own sanity. I needed to see it for myself. Rowan and I spent the next few days quietly gathering information. I watched Maren more closely than ever, noting every excuse, every unexplained absence. I checked her calendar, her emails, even the way she dressed. She started wearing perfume again, a scent I didn't recognize. She bought new clothes, more daring than her usual style. I felt like a detective in my own home, piecing together a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Then one Thursday evening, I overheard Maren on the phone in the backyard. She thought I was asleep, but her voice carried through the open window. "Yes, Beckett, Saturday's perfect. I can't wait. I'll wear that dress you like." My stomach turned. There it was. Confirmation. Plain and simple. I scribbled down every detail. The date, the time, the restaurant she mentioned. It was one of those upscale places downtown, the kind we'd always said we'd try but never did. That night, Rowan and I sat in my living room, plotting out every step. We agreed that confronting Maren in private would only give her a chance to lie or manipulate the story. If I wanted the truth to come out, it had to be public. It had to be undeniable. "You need people there who matter," Rowan said. "People who'll believe what they see with their own eyes." The idea made my stomach clench, but I knew he was right. I called Sable, Maren's younger sister, and a few close friends. I told them I wanted to celebrate a promotion at work, a harmless lie, but one that would ensure they'd all be at the restaurant on Saturday night. I could hear the excitement in Sable's voice, her eagerness to spend time together as a family. The guilt gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about revenge, it was about the truth. As Saturday approached, I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd act. I pictured Maren walking in, expecting a secret rendezvous with Beckett, only to find herself surrounded by the people who knew her best. I imagined the look on her face when she realized there was nowhere left to hide. The thought filled me with dread and a strange sense of anticipation. I was about to shatter the illusion of our marriage, to drag everything into the light. The night before, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Maren's steady breathing beside me. I wondered if she had any idea what was coming, if she'd ever loved me at all, or if I'd just been a convenient part of her life. I promised myself that no matter how much it hurt, I wouldn't back down. I deserved the truth, and I was finally ready to face it, no matter the cost. The hours leading up to that night felt like a slow, relentless countdown. Every tick of the clock echoed in my chest, a reminder that I was about to step into a world where nothing would ever be the same. Rowan insisted on driving, probably sensing that my nerves were shot. I barely remember the ride downtown, the city lights blurring past, as my mind replayed every moment with Maren, every laugh, every promise, every lie. The restaurant was a place I'd only seen from the outside, the kind of elegant spot with valet parking and soft golden lighting that made everyone look a little more glamorous than they really were. I'd chosen it for a reason. It was public, upscale, and, most importantly, impossible for Maren to talk her way out of what was about to happen. Rowan and I arrived early. The maitre d' greeted us with a practiced smile and led us to a corner table with a clear view of the main dining area. My heart pounded as I scanned the room, picturing Maren and Beckett walking in together, hand in hand, oblivious to the storm waiting for them. One by one, our friends and family filtered in, each under the impression that we were celebrating a big promotion I'd supposedly received. Maren's sister, Sable, was the last to arrive, her eyes shining with excitement. I felt a pang of guilt for dragging them into this, but I knew I needed witnesses, people who loved us, who would see the truth for themselves. I could barely keep up the act, my hands clammy as I forced a smile and made small talk. Every time the door opened, my breath caught in my throat. Then, just past 8, I saw them. Maren entered first, her auburn hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, dressed in a deep emerald dress that made her eyes almost glow. Beckett followed, tall and confident, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. They looked like any other couple out for a romantic night, laughing quietly, as they were led to a table across the room. I watched as Maren leaned in, her expression open and unguarded in a way I hadn't seen in years. The sight of it twisted something inside me. Rowan squeezed my shoulder, grounding me. "You ready?" he whispered. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I'd ever really be ready for what was coming. I spent the next half hour watching them, every touch, every shared glance, every inside joke. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, invisible and powerless, yet unable to look away. The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversation and the clink of glasses, but for me, everything faded into the background. All I could see was Maren, living a life I'd never been invited into. I caught glimpses of our friends and family, their faces growing puzzled as they noticed Maren across the room, clearly not alone. Sable's eyes darted between me and her sister, confusion giving way to dawning horror. I checked my phone, confirming the messages I'd sent to everyone involved. The plan was simple. At the right moment, Rowan would give me the signal, and we'd all converge on Maren's table together. I rehearsed my words in my head, my anger simmering beneath the surface. I wanted the truth out in the open. No more secrets, no more lies. As the minutes crawled by, I felt the weight of what I was about to do settle on my shoulders. This was it, the point of no return. I could feel my pulse in my throat as Rowan gave me the signal. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. I stood up, legs unsteady, and nodded to Sable and the others. Together we moved across the restaurant floor, the soft clinking of glasses and low hum of conversation fading as our group approached Maren's table. I caught a glimpse of her, laughing at something Beckett said, her green eyes sparkling in the candlelight. She looked so alive, so free, nothing like the distant wife I'd known for months. Beckett noticed us first. His smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face as he realized we weren't just passing by. Maren turned, and for a split second, she didn't recognize me. Then her expression shifted from confusion to shock, her cheeks flushing a deep red that stood out even against her auburn hair. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on us, curiosity turning quickly to discomfort as they sensed something was terribly wrong. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and opened the messages I'd saved. "Maren," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Maybe you'd like to explain these to everyone." I read aloud the words that had haunted me for days, her promises to Beckett, her confessions, her plans for secret meetings. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Beckett tried to interject, but Rowan stepped forward, blocking him, with a look that brooked no argument. Maren's eyes darted around the table, searching for an escape. Sable's face crumpled in disbelief, and one of our friends covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. The silence in the restaurant was absolute, broken only by the faint sound of someone recording on their phone. Maren's hands shook as she tried to speak, her voice barely a whisper. "Callum, please, can we talk about this?" But I shook my head. "No more lies, Maren. Not tonight." I looked at Beckett, who sat frozen, his confidence evaporated. "You knew she was married," I said, my voice sharp. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The humiliation was complete. Maren's carefully constructed world collapsed in front of her. Her friends, her family, and a room full of strangers, now witnesses to her betrayal. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the whispers began. Diners leaned across tables, murmuring to each other, some pulling out their phones to capture the scene. Maren buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. The pain was there, raw and deep, but so was a sense of finality. The truth was out. There was nothing left to hide. Sable reached for Maren, but she pulled away, tears streaking her mascara. Rowan put a hand on my back, steadying me. I realized I was shaking, adrenaline and heartbreak mixing in my veins. I glanced around the restaurant. Every eye was on us, judgment and pity mingling in their stares. Maren looked at me one last time, her green eyes pleading for something I could no longer give. I turned away, leading our group back to our table, the echoes of her humiliation following us with every step. That night, everything changed. The woman I thought I loved was gone, replaced by a stranger whose secrets had been laid bare for the world to see. And as I sat back down, the reality of what I'd done settled over me. There was no going back, not for me, not for Maren, not for any of us. The fallout was immediate and relentless. By the time I left the restaurant, I could already see the glow of phone screens, people whispering and texting, the story spreading like wildfire. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I crashed on Rowan's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the confrontation. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls from Maren, from Sable, from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. I needed space, and for the first time in months, I felt justified in taking it. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Someone had posted a video of the confrontation online. The title was brutal. Cheating wife exposed at upscale restaurant. By noon, it had thousands of views. People I barely knew reached out, some offering support, others just hungry for the details. My inbox filled with messages, some sympathetic, some cruel, all of them reminders that my private pain had become public property. Maren's world unraveled even faster. She called me over and over, her voicemails swinging wildly between anger, pleading, and despair. At work, the whispers started. Her colleagues saw the video, and soon her boss called her in for a meeting. She was placed on leave, pending investigation into conduct unbecoming. Even Beckett tried reaching out, but I had nothing left to say to him. I heard through the grapevine that his own relationship had imploded, collateral damage in the wreckage we'd left behind. My friends and family rallied around me, but even their support felt hollow. I was grateful, of course, but there was an emptiness inside me that nothing could fill. I'd exposed Maren because I needed the truth out in the open, but I hadn't anticipated the tidal wave of humiliation that would follow her everywhere. She became a pariah overnight. Neighbors avoided her, old friends stopped returning her calls, and even her social media accounts were flooded with hate. The woman with the striking auburn hair and emerald eyes who once lit up every room now shrank from the world, her confidence shattered. I struggled with my own guilt. I'd wanted justice, not destruction. I never imagined how far the story would spread or how vicious people could be when they smelled blood. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd gone too far, if there might have been a way to end our marriage without turning Maren into a public spectacle. But then I'd remember the months of lies, the way she'd looked at Beckett, and the way she'd made me question my own reality. I reminded myself that I hadn't created this mess, I'd just refused to keep it hidden. As the days turned into weeks, the story faded from the front of people's minds, replaced by the next scandal, the next viral video. But for us, the consequences lingered. Maren stayed with Sable for a while, barely leaving the house. I saw her once, from a distance, her hair pulled back, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of her choices had physically diminished her. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Through it all, I tried to hold on to my own sense of self. I went back to work, picked up old hobbies, forced myself to see friends even when I wanted to disappear. The humiliation had been public, but the healing would have to be private. I knew I'd never be the same, but I also knew I couldn't let this story define me forever. The worst was over, but the journey to rebuild my life was just beginning. The weeks that followed felt like living in the aftermath of a hurricane. Everything familiar was still there, but nothing was the same. My days settled into a strange new rhythm. I'd wake up in my half-empty apartment, the silence heavier than ever, and force myself through the motions of work and daily life. There were moments when the pain would hit me out of nowhere. A song on the radio, a forgotten photo in a drawer, the scent of Maren's perfume lingering on an old sweater. Each time, I reminded myself that healing was supposed to hurt. Maren tried to reach out. At first, her messages were desperate apologies, long and rambling, filled with regret and explanations that never quite made sense. She wanted to meet, to talk, to explain herself in person. I ignored her at first, not out of cruelty, but because I knew I wasn't ready. I needed to find my own footing before I could face her again. When I finally agreed to meet, it was in a quiet park, far from prying eyes and gossiping mouths. She looked different, thinner, paler, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy knot. Her green eyes were red-rimmed, and she fidgeted with her hands. As she spoke, Maren apologized over and over, her voice breaking as she tried to explain how lost she'd felt, how the excitement with Beckett had made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. She didn't ask for forgiveness, only understanding. For the first time, I saw her not as the villain of my story, but as someone deeply flawed and hurting in her own way. We talked for a long time. I told her about my pain, my anger, the humiliation I'd felt. She listened, tears streaming down her face, never once trying to defend what she'd done. When we parted, there was no dramatic reconciliation, no promises of getting back together, just two people finally telling the truth, accepting that the life they'd built together was over. After that day, I felt lighter. The bitterness began to fade, replaced by a cautious hope. I started therapy, determined not to let this betrayal define my future. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, threw myself into work, and even picked up running again. Each small victory. Each day I didn't check Maren's social media. Each night I slept through without nightmares, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Maren slowly began to rebuild her own life. I heard from Sable that she'd started volunteering at a local shelter, trying to make amends in whatever way she could. She kept her distance, respecting the boundaries I'd set, and for that I was grateful. I didn't know if she'd ever truly forgive herself, but I hoped she'd find peace. Looking back, I realized that the worst night of my life had also been the beginning of something new. I'd lost the woman I loved, but I'd found a strength I never knew I had. The public humiliation, the whispers, the viral videos, they were all just noise. What mattered was that I'd survived, and that I was moving forward, step by step. My story wasn't one of revenge or destruction, but of survival and eventually forgiveness. And as I looked toward the future, I finally felt ready to start living again.